Now, viewers, the Karnataka Assembly is witnessing tumultuous scenes over a remark, as I said, made by a state minister, Mr. Ishwarappa, who said that he was dreaming of seeing a saffron flag in the future flying from the ramparts of the Red Fort. Scenes of Congress MLAs sleeping overnight on mattresses and holding the assembly to ransom have been splashed all over the TV. The Congress says that they will continue the protest till sedition charges aren't clamped against KS Ishwarappa for these remarks. The minister dared to dream that one day a saffron flag would fly atop the Red Fort, they claim, and they say that this is a massive insult to the tricolour. The comment has caused the Congress to suspect that the BJP is now fully committed to the establishment of a Hindu Rashtra sooner than later. Now, viewers, first listen to what Mr. Ishwarappa has said.
ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು ನಾನು ಇವತ್ತಲ್ಲ ರೀ ಯಾವತ್ತೋ ಒಂದಿನ ಇವತ್ತು ಹಿಂದೂ ವಿಚಾರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ, ಹಿಂದುತ್ವದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ. ಅಯೋಧ್ಯೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಮ ಮಂದಿರ ಕಟ್ತೀರಾ ಅಂತಂದಾಗ ಒಂದು ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರು, ನಗ್ತಿದ್ರು, ಹೌದಾ? ಕಟ್ಟುದಲ್ಲ ಈಗ. ಹಾಗೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನು 100 ವರ್ಷನೋ 200 ವರ್ಷನೋ 500 ವರ್ಷ ನಂತರ ಭಗವತ್ ಧ್ವಜವೇ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಧ್ವಜ ಆಗಬಹುದು, ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಹಾರಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು, ಈಗ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಸಂವಿಧಾನಬದ್ಧವಾಗಿ ತ್ರಿವರ್ಣ ಧ್ವಜ ನಮ್ಮ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ ಧ್ವಜ ಅಂತ ಒಪ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಗೌರವ ಕೊಡಲೇಬೇಕು. ಯಾರೇ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಗೌರವ ಕೊಡ ತಪ್ಪಿದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ ದ್ರೋಹಿ ಆಗ್ತಾನೆ.
Now, viewers, listen to what some of the Congress MLAs, legislators are saying. They say that this is now definitive indication that our constitution is going to be rewritten, and slowly but surely the BJP's grand design of establishing a Hindu Rashtra will be realized. Now let's just assess this, viewers. Many people from the BJP says that this is overhyped. This threat is overhyped. It doesn't actually match to the facts on the ground. What are some of these facts, viewers? The BJP, in its defense, argues that, look, we've done so much for Muslim women. We banned the triple talaq plea and passed a law to ban it. We backed the, triple talaq plea and passed a law to ban it. The Prime Minister himself has said that Indian Muslims will live and die for India, therefore he has so much regard for them, that he constantly talks about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, that he has never skimped in any which way on designing policies, benefits, etc. for the Muslim community. In fact, if anything, some of these policies have been buffered, given more resources, and he also says that his government doesn't distinguish or differentiate on the basis of religion or caste. The PM says that he visited, or the BJP says that the PM visits the Aligarh Muslim University, calls it a mini India, and therefore underlines its salience. And of course, viewers, he said that his government, the BJP government, have given 51,000 gifts at the center for weddings, so girls, Muslim girls, can study. There are several of these reasons that are stated by a large number of BJP functionaries. Let's, viewers, go over some of the statements that, or actions that are making the minorities or those that speak for their interests suspicious, and allege that there is in the backdrop a conspiracy to establish a Hindu Rashtra. They said, look at the delayed action on hate mongers at Haridwar Dharam Sansad. They said the UAPA accused Sadhvi Pragya was given a ticket to contest the Lok Sabha poll. She's in Parliament today, and this is a clear signal to embolden those that fantasize about an aggressive Hindutva or a militant Hindutva. That's what they say. They point to what C.T. Ravi says. India was and will always be a Hindu Rashtra. Congress appeals minorities, but now Hindus are united. And several other hate speeches or alleged hate speeches from the likes of Pragya Singh Thakur. They even say that Mohan Bhagwat talks about a Hindu Rashtra, Hinduism, cultural legacy of India, and therefore at some time or the other will prevail. Now viewers, is this hype or is there some truth to this? Let's open this up. We have with us Supreme Court advocates this evening. Salman Khurshid, who is also, of course, Union Law Minister in the UPA. We also have with us Supreme Court advocate J.Sai Deepak. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Just the two of you. I want you to first, Mr. Khurshid, tell me why there is a prevailing fear amongst Muslims and a large number of the liberal intelligentsia that there is a project to construct a Hindu Rashtra.
Well, to be fair, the aspiration for a Hindu Rashtra, whatever that means, I'm not even sure there is clarity about what a Hindu Rashtra means. We can go into the specifics in a moment, but there is ample data and evidence available that people have been speaking of a Hindu Rashtra or speaking of dimensions that point towards a Hindu Rashtra. If they don't want to bring about a Hindu Rashtra, then they can just simply say that we have no intention of bringing about Hindu Rashtra. Let's be clear that the dominance or the significance of the beliefs of the majority in our country have to be respected, and they are automatically fed into the system and are part of the system. That's what a majority-minority democratic situation and a constitutional law is about. Therefore, these are not a binary that you're either for a Hindu Rashtra or you're against any form of Hindu influence in our way of life, in our way of national life. That binary is not available. And if that binary is used, it's used dishonestly. I do believe that this is the ground reality.
This is the ground reality. Okay, J.Sai Deepak, we are seeing the scenes now in the Karnataka Assembly. Legislators on mattresses spending nights, virtually blockading the House, saying 5 sedition charges. If you don't, we know what you're up to. You're going to realize this dream of flying the saffron flag, which will end any pretenses of India being a secular, liberal country. How do you respond to this?
I think I agree with Mr. Khurshid on the point that there is no clarity with respect to the nature of this Hindu Rashtra. Therefore, at this stage, to speculate as to whether a Hindu Rashtra, as it stands in terms of what it is meant to be or what they want it to be, will it translate to an anti-minority bias? I really don't know what is the basis of this particular conclusion. Two, I think when you mention or when you speak of a Hindu Rashtra, we have to take into account what is it that most people who have been the proponents of this particular idea, what is it that they have said? The point that has been made repeatedly is that you do not deny the dharmic antecedents of this particular civilization, and you do not try to sever its present from its past, but that does not in any manner translate to shrinkage of the rights of minorities which have been promised under the Constitution, and put faith in the fact that even when this Constitution did not exist, it is this particular land that has welcomed non-Hindu minorities from across the world who were persecuted. Therefore, first of all, I think there is a need for some kind of clarity on the metes and bounds and the outer limits of this Hindu Rashtra. Therefore, a definition is important. As Mr. Khurshid is a lawyer and I too am a lawyer, both of us know for a fact that definitions ultimately form the basis of any particular structure or superstructure. So therefore, I'm actually happy to have a discussion on the metes and bounds of this, and I think Mr. Khurshid is completely right on this particular aspect. Second, if the statements of certain individuals are to be treated as the basis for what would be the nature of this Hindu Rashtra or minority position, then I must effectively point out the statements made by several leaders from these so-called secular parties as well as by the Owaisi brothers with respect to Hindus, their beliefs and whatnot, when in fact the very integrity of the Indian state has been challenged, and effectively it's been said that you remove the police machinery and you see what happens. All kinds of inflammatory statements have been made. So if those statements don't reflect the large minority, the large section of the Muslim population going by what they say, then why should the statement of a few individuals, even if they're elected MPs, translate to a reflection of what is a Hindu Rashtra? So I don't think you should use the worst of, let's say, examples from each side to understand what is the same position with respect to each side. If you're asking for sanity, then you ask for what is it that the average Hindu says with respect to this, what is it that the average Muslim says with respect to this. As long as these metes and bounds of the discussion are not clarified, I think it's easy for us to trade statements made by each other. I can cite 10 different statements and he will cite 5 different statements, and ultimately what are we left with? The discussion doesn't move forward. The core issue is this. One, why is there a need for a discussion on Hindu Rashtra? Why does it start? And is it recent? 2, what is the potential shape or prospective shape of this Hindu Rashtra? 3, from a constitutional perspective, what would it actually translate to? What would it have? What would be the direct bearing of this particular issue or this particular phraseology or this particular mindset on what we know as secularism today? In this regard, I'll just make one point and I'll leave it for you to take it further. If you look at the history of evolution of secularism in Europe and in every other place, it has never required any of these countries to give up their Christian identity or their own religious identity. Secularism, when followed in Europe, United States and every other place which happened to be the mothership, so to speak, of this particular construct, have been very clear that while we clearly identify ourselves to be either a Christian nation or a Protestant nation or a Catholic nation, we promise that we will give equal rights to others who do not subscribe to this particular denomination or this particular faith. So secularism is actually what is known as Christian secularism. Therefore, when they speak of a Hindu Rashtra, my assumption would be, and since I can't be the spokesperson for anybody else, based on what I've read so far, the ideologues of this particular point of view have specifically said it would effectively translate to a Hindu secular state, which means we will not sever the roots of this particular land and the identity of this particular land from the present. At the same time, we will treat everybody with a certain degree of respect and at par with each other as far as the law is concerned. To that extent, in principle, I genuinely don't see a problem. But if the idea is to say India and therefore Bharat should effectively give up its entire heritage, its civilizational heritage, that I think would be a stretch, because it takes forward whatever we have suffered for the last 1400 years or 1500 years. That may not be right. Every culture and every society has a right to assert its core identity, but that does not need to come at the expense of anybody else's identity. But if someone else believes that the assertion of the native identity is necessarily anti-particular group, then they have to really ask themselves, why have they positioned themselves in such an adversarial position or fashion as far as the native identity is concerned? That's a question for them to answer, not for the majority to answer.
Okay, Salman Khurshid, look, you wrote a book. The book was challenged in court, its release. There was a ban on its publication. Of course, that was thrown out. It's called Sunrise Over Ayodhya, Nation Undina Times, where you allegedly compared Hindutva with the Islamic State and Boko Haram, etc. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, of course. We also had a conversation about that. You know that Mohan Bhagwat, who represents the RSS that has or subscribes to a Hindutva worldview, has talked about the concept of a Hindu Rashtra, and it is not divorced really from a concept which we all recognize, which is Hinduness, which is quite open and tolerant. It presages really not a way of life, but a view on life. So it is quite open. Yet there are individuals such as yourself who equate the RSS or the Congress party, for instance, that equates the RSS with the ISIS and Boko Haram. How does this square, sir?
Well, look, we have to be extremely cautious and careful with words. There is an issue the Congress party has with the RSS, but don't confuse that with what I said. I didn't talk about the RSS. I talked about a distorted form of Hindutva. There is nothing wrong with Hindutva per se, but if Hindutva is used for a distorted mentality, just as Islam is used for a distorted mentality under ISIS and Boko Haram, then both have to be condemned. There is no right of Hindutva not to be condemned despite being violent, despite being disruptive, just as they have no right not to be condemned. But be that as it may, I think the important fact is very clever. My friend just now has very cleverly redefined something. He's talking about a civilizational truth. The civilizational truth about India cannot be frozen 1400 years ago or 2000 years ago. It is an important segment, important element, and important base of the Indian civilization. But an Indian civilization is not Hindu civilization. Indian civilization is truly Indian, an amalgam of Hindu and Islamic civilization. Now you can't say that Taj Mahal is a distortion of our civilization. You can't say that the Mughal rule was a distortion of our civilization. If you do that, then there is no scope for conversation. The conversation has to be that don't defile or don't redefine anything that is a core part of our understanding of a religious or a cultural ethos. But you can't just pretend that nothing has happened and India hasn't moved forward. India has moved forward in many ways. I'll give you a very trite example. India considers Sunday to be a holiday in a week, unlike Arab countries that treat Friday as a holiday in the week. But if we were to follow Hindu ethos, we might have made it Tuesday, or we might have made it Friday, depending upon which sect of Hinduism you follow. But it wouldn't be Sunday. Sunday we followed from the Christian ethos, and we followed it because it was given to us by the British. Now, if somebody just insists that they want to change Sunday to a Friday or Sunday to a Tuesday, then you are really trying to remove an added dimension of your life, of your national life, that has grown incrementally over the years. We've removed the statues that the British had planted in our country. Do we want to remove the calendar as well? Do we want to change the calendar as well? It's an important question. And we can't just redefine saying, okay, you have to have another calendar, which is a Hindu calendar, because we are a Hindu country. We've moved to a modern calendar, and that modern calendar doesn't hurt a Hindu or a Muslim in any way. The Hijri calendar is still there, the Hindu calendar is still there, and whatever coordinates are required are given. I don't think it creates any crisis for our national life, merely because we holiday on Sunday and we take Saturdays as half days. I don't think it creates a crisis, unless somebody wants to create a crisis the way they're trying to do in Karnataka.
Okay. Very quick, Sai Deepak. Yes.
So I'm happy that there is an admission from a senior member of the Congress party that Hindutva per se is not evil and that it is acceptable. It is distortion of a particular ideology that he has a problem with. I don't think I can have an issue with that particular position at all. After all, any position when distorted and taken to its extremes is certainly not acceptable. But this concession that's been made by Mr. Khurshid, I think it's worthy of taking note of, and I'm thankful for this particular concession. Now, coming to the second issue, why is it that when we speak of, let's say, Indian civilization, or let's say the treatment of minorities in this country, there is never a discussion with respect to the Parsis, or for that matter, the Jews of this particular country? There is only one good reason for that. What is it? They too follow an iconoclastic, monotheistic faith system or a worldview. However, they have managed to blend in as far as this particular country is concerned, without losing what belongs to them essentially and what makes them different. Nobody in this country prior to the constitution or after the constitution has ever insisted upon their conversion to Hinduism if they have to be accepted as part of this particular society, to say when you're at your most vulnerable and you've been kicked out of your countries, when you come here you have to turn Hindu. Nobody ever insisted on that. That is the fundamental nature of this particular civilization, which means what? You don't need to give up what belongs to you, but as long as you show a tendency or a propensity to live with others, then there is no problem and you become accepted as part of this particular civilization. Now, the problem with Mr. Khurshid's proposition, and here I would certainly request that I certainly deliver a copy of my book to him, because scholarly speaking and scientifically speaking, as well as from a humanities perspective, his position is completely wrong. Every school of humanities, when it starts asking what is the native identity of a particular society or a culture, has a specific cutoff period. So for instance, when you ask Latin Americans, what is the core identity of these countries and cultures in Latin America, they identify prior to 1498, so to speak, before Christopher Columbus effectively set foot on that particular soil and started the process of evangelization of Latin America. In Bharat, therefore, to say that there is a cutoff period to identify what is the native identity of this particular country is not wrong. However, what would be wrong would be to say those people who subscribe to these faith systems which do not emanate from this particular land or do not originate from this particular land should be kicked out. That's a very different position to take. That would be an incorrect position to take. However, in order to accommodate someone who's come to this particular land, whether through peaceful means or violent means, ultimately their successors and their, let's say, descendants, so to speak, are here. You wish to accommodate them without giving up what belongs to you. Now, therefore, it is Mr. Khurshid's position that 52 Islamic countries can have a Muslim identity, over 100 countries can have a Christian identity, but somehow a Hindu majority Bharat with a Hindu civilizational heritage is not entitled to the basic right of the assertion of its identity. This, according to me, flies in the face of logic, as well as flies in the face of equal treatment of every community and identity to assert its core identity. I'm sorry to say this particular argument seems positively a weaponization of secularism to the detriment of Hindus to assert their basic cultural identity and civilizational identity. This cannot be accepted. So I am not presenting something that is clever or intelligent or cunning. I am presenting something that has been the treatment of communities and cultures across the world. And this is the logic on the basis of which you decide what is the native identity or the core culture of a particular geography, so to speak. Therefore, I am not saying something that is outside the realm of reasonableness.
Okay, well, viewers, we've heard two sides. This debate can go on and on. We have to apply a cutoff, and that cutoff is a break. But before that, okay, Mr. Khurshid, very quickly, yes, I'll give you...
Blacks have no rights in America. America should go back to being a white country. Blacks have no right. And Obama should not have been president of the United States. I think this is a flawed argument, but you don't have enough time to get this to go forward. We'll have to talk another day, and I'll certainly read his book, but I think it's a completely flawed argument. I have no concern with Islamic countries. My concern is about India, and you can't talk about India in terms of Islamic countries or Christian countries.
Okay, yeah. Quick response, Jai Sai Deepak, quick response.
It's a false parallel that Mr. Khurshid is drawing. Nobody has ever said and can ever say that a non-Hindu can never occupy a constitutional position or become the prime minister of the country. That's never been the statement that's been made. I repeat, equal treatment of all communities for the purposes of all positions does not militate or is not at loggerheads with the assertion of the core identity of the land. These are not conflicting positions. These are not mutually exclusive positions. Unfortunately, it seems like Mr. Khurshid wants to treat them in silos. That's all I have to say.
Okay, well, viewers, as I said, we could keep debating this and we could keep going back and forth, but I am going to have to apply some sort of a cutoff, and that is right now. We take a short break, viewers. We're right back. Don't